Time with Herman and Sharron.
Okay, Sharron.
I think that's us.
That's us right here. Let me close the doors behind me.
Okay.
We have one of my favorite guests.
Yes, we
You
do.
want to meet him? William
Yes.
Federer, right here.
Right there he is.
Good to have you,
Hello.
buddy. God bless.
Great to be with you,
Good
Herman
to see you
Sharron.
again.
This is
Well,
Sharron.
thank you for having me on.
Have a seat. This is the most amazing, prolific writer
That's right.
I know. And believe you me, over these almost 40 years of interviews, I have met many.
We've learned a lot, haven't we?
Look at this small clip, and then we'll get into the interview. Watch.
We see that human nature has not changed. And from the beginning, from the fall in the garden, man has a selfish nature that wants to take from others and will even kill, like Cain killed Abel. And so we see this is magnified in kingdoms and in empires throughout history. Now, a British statesman named Lord Acton said, "Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely." So as power concentrates into the hands of that one, it ends up being more corrupted. And we can see the beginnings of the opposite is power separated. Now, when power is concentrated, the state is supreme and the king is the head of the state. When power is separated, the individual is supreme. The founders in America wanted to maximize the individual, the freedom and liberty, and it worked. And America produced the most prosperous, the most opportunity, the most freedom of any nation in all the 6,000 years of recorded human history. Now, the problem is if every person is supreme and a king unto themselves, there would be anarchy. Everybody would just want to do what they wanted to do, unless they all had Judeo-Christian morals. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. There's a God in heaven that's going to hold you accountable, and he wants you to be nice to the poor and the weak and the innocent and treat everyone fairly, because every person is made equal in the eyes of this Creator. So when power is concentrated, the state is supreme, the king is the head of the state. When power is separated, the individual is supreme, and that is where America had its experiment.
We actually have William Federer in person sitting on our chair in our backyard. He is best-selling author and nationally known speaker and president of AmeriSearch, Inc., and a former U.S. congressional candidate. We'll talk a little bit about that, what happened. He has a daily radio feature, America Minute, and a popular television program, Faith and History, which broadcasts nationally. Federer brings informative educational answers on important and critical topics forever. He is, how many books have you written?
Well, it's over 20.
Oh my
Wow.
But let me just, I love doing this because I've got all of his books in my office. I got to take you up to my office. We have a little time today, maybe I'll do that. But I have a whole section of Federer books. And every once in a while, I'll go, you know, this person this person loves this subject. And so I'll take one of them and I go, I think I need to send this one to him. And the other day I did that very thing. But I mean, his books are keepers. Have you ever had, you know, I interview a lot of people, and a few of them are keepers. And this is one of my favorite.
Yeah.
Now you can, Dave, maybe you could put the online up there right now, and I'm just kind of doing this little commercial right now. If you can put his website, if you would, if you can find that. This is one of my favorite, and it is absolutely one of the best. And I have a real, and this is an autographed copy. I don't see the website, Dave. What happened? Okay.
Kevin.
Okay. He's typing it up now? Okay. There you go. This is one of my favorite because every question I've got, I can literally go to this if it has to do with politics and find it right here. So it is one of the best. I'll put that over here. He has, I've got them all here. This is
You didn't know he was going to do this,
Yeah,
did you?
I mean, this is called Treacherous World of the 16th Century. Now, in fact, Dave, thank you, Dave. Boy.
I
This,
think we're talking about that today.
yeah, this well, we're talking the open subject, and we're talking about this one on the second, because we're going to do a two-part with William Federer. So you'll need to watch today and then the second part, which will be just as good, if not better, than the first part. But this is what every American needs to know about the Quran. And thank you, Dave. Boy, Dave is on the ball. See what I'm saying? And I know Dave doesn't have this one because I just brought this out of my studies. Can you believe the interesting history of income tax? And this will blow you away.
You can have education.
You do not know, I guarantee you, what he has written in this. I have no idea where this guy gets his materials, but it's dead on. And then, of course, he has DVDs that you can order on that website right there. I hate to cover you up, honey, but I'm just going to move these right over here, okay?
Yeah.
And Change to Change is kind of what we're going to spotlight on today. That's the video that you saw. You can get a DVD. Thank you, Dave. And you can get a DVD of that particular subject. And then I didn't show you this one, Rise of the Tyrant. And I know he didn't have a shot of that one, but this is another book. I mean, I love his writing because, and these are all keepers, by the way. I don't know how many more he's going to write, but I will have those in my library. So good to have you.
Oh, great to be with you.
What an honor.
Good to
All right,
have you.
Sharron.
Yeah.
Okay, the history, you say this in your book, history is the memory of a nation. So
Are we
why-
forgetting our history?
yeah, why today are we literally
Yeah.
revising history? The people in office, the last president was the worst we've ever had. I thought Jimmy Carter was. But his whole intent was to wipe out what we in America have believed for decades. And we are having anarchy all across the country because the people from the universities and the professors have taught that that's what you do if you don't get your way. Go from there.
Well, there's a communist tactic called deconstruction, where you separate a people from their past, get them into a neutral position where they do not remember where they came from, and then you brainwash them into the future you have planned for them. And it's actually a sales technique. So if I was a toothpaste salesman, the first thing I do is say negative things about the toothpaste you're currently using. You're still using that old stuff? Don't you know it'll eat the enamel off your teeth? Yikes, you're repulsed by it. Now I got you into a neutral, you're open-minded, what are all the toothpastes out there? Then I give you my pitch for this brand new tartar-controlled breath freshener stuff. So that's what they do. They go into the classrooms, tell the kids negative things about the founders. They
That's
took
the
land from
professors.
Yes, they write the textbooks and they portray the founders as taking land from Indians and selling people into slavery. And yikes, the students are repulsed by them. Now you got the kids into it neutral, they're open-minded, what are all the belief systems out there? Then you give them your pitch for LGBT or socialism or Islam. And we see Europe went through this. Europe went from a Judeo-Christian Europe with Catholic cathedrals, Protestant Reformation, Jewish neighborhoods, to a secular neutral Europe with the French Revolution and free sex, anything goes, and Napoleon spreading this all around. And now it's entering an Islamic Europe with Muhammad being the #1 name for newborns in London, Milan, and Brussels. So we're sort of experiencing a gene therapy for a culture. Take out the old DNA identity and you insert a new one. And the Chinese did this. There was the emperor that started the Han dynasty back in the 2nd century AD, and he combined and conquered a bunch of kingdoms. And he was always being criticized for not doing things the way they used to be done. He got fed up. He decided he was going to erase the memory of how they used to be done. And he burnt thousands of years of Chinese history. And he said, if anyone should be caught with the classics of history, their house will be burned and they'll be tattooed and sent to build the Great Wall of China.
And he tore down the monuments too, like we're doing.
Yes, yes. So whenever you see the terracotta soldiers, that was the emperor that erased the history. So Mao Zedong modeled himself after that and said, well, let's destroy. So in the 1950s, during the Cultural Revolution, Mao Zedong destroyed thousands of years of Chinese culture. because he wanted to have, killed 80 million people in the process. So he had this massive uneducated young people that he could brainwash into the People's Republic of China. And so there is an intentional effort to separate people from their history. And so what I decided to do with this book in particular, The Change to Change, is say, well, let's look at all of world history. So if you look at a digitized picture and you're so zoomed in, all you see is the pixels, and I ask you what you're looking at, you're like, I don't know, this pixel sort of looks like that pixel. But if you click zoom out, all of a sudden you can recognize it. Sometimes we're so zoomed into the day-to-day headlines, and you say, what's happening in the world? I don't know, today sort of looks like yesterday. Let's zoom out and look at a couple of decades and millenniums. So let's look at all the world history. And so in this book, I literally went back to the beginning of the invention of writing. Sumerian cuneiform on clay tablets in the Mesopotamian Valley. Today that's Iraq. And so the writing started as an accounting method for kings to keep track of everything they owned. So Nimrod, Tower of Babel, and pharaohs, and so they'd take a stick, poke it in clay. That was the beginning of writing. Anyway, then you had Egyptian hieroglyphics were invented around 2500 BC, and Chinese characters around that same time. And so if we look at the writing, what do the records show us? They show us that the most common form of government is kings. So Nimrod, Tower of Babel, 2,000 years of Egyptian pharaohs, 5,000 years of Chinese emperors, Cyrus of Persia, and then Alexander the Great conquered Persia, and then the Romans conquered. And as the other thing I noticed in reading through these, because I list kingdom by kingdom, is that the kingdoms keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, because with military advancements you can kill more people. But it's that same fallen nature of Cain killing Abel. And so what we're seeing is that seed that's in fallen man gets to grow, and you have brothers beating up each other, bullies being, a bully on a playground, but then you have a guy that's in charge of a city and he conquers another city, and then you got emperors, and before you know it, you can clearly see once this seed fills its ultimate fruition, it wants to conquer the world. That sin of Adam sinning, that selfishness, it just keeps magnifying over the 6 centuries, or 6 millennium, 6,000 years of recorded history, up until the book of Revelation talks about the Antichrist, the one world government, and so forth. So the idea that I looked at in this history is how the norm is for power to concentrate, and St. Augustine calls it libido dominandi, the lust to dominate. And so again, you put some babies in a playpen, one takes the rattle from the others. You put some girls in a clique, and one of them's the diva. You put some people in the woods, one of them's the Indian chief. And you put them in an inner city, one of them's a gang leader. So all a king is a glorified gang leader. And it's a hierarchical system.
Wow.
If you're friends with the king, you're more equal. If you're not friends with the king, you're less equal. And if you're an enemy of the king, you're dead. It's called treason.
That analogy is right dead on.
Mm-hmm.
And people say, well, if I were the king, I'd be really fair. I say, let's pretend like you are the king and things are going fine until you have a sister that you really love, and she has a teenage son who drinks and drives and parties and hits someone with a car and kills him. And now this teenager is facing manslaughter charges, mandatory prison sentences, and your sister comes begging to you. And she says, you're not going to let my little Johnny get locked away half his life. It wasn't his fault. Those other kids talked him into it, blah, blah, blah. What are you going to say to your sister? Well, I'll let little Johnny off the hook this time, but don't let it happen again. Guess what? As soon as you say that, you are the corrupt dictator. You just sent ripples through your kingdom that if you're family or friends with the king, you get special treatment. If you're not family or friends, you don't get it. And if you're wanting to point out the king's favoritism and corruption, he's going to want to shut you up. That's the dilemma. People in power want to stay in power. And so, anyway, as the centuries go on, the kingdoms get bigger, until the King of England had the biggest empire that planet Earth had ever seen. The British Empire. The sun never set on the British Empire. He had Australia, New Zealand, Hong Kong, India, which is a quarter of the world's population right there. He had British Guyana, Jamaica, Canada, and America. And America's founders, they did not like this globalist king telling us what to do, and so they broke away and flipped it, and they made the people the king. And so what I did in this book, The Rise of the Tyrant, I sort of...
Oh, I love that one.
So this one's on the kings, this one's on the republics and democracies. So there's very few chances where people try to break away from a king. And in the book, I actually document how since the power concentrates, people say, well, how do we limit a king? So the first way they limited the king was through his own words. And we saw that with the king of Babylon or whatever, saying, well, I don't want to see Vashti, my wife, again because she didn't come out for my party. And then later he regrets it. And they say, sorry, you can't change your word. You said it. And then Darius, nobody can pray to anybody but you for 30 days. He goes, okay, he signs it. And then they say, hey, Daniel, we caught him praying, and you got to throw him in the line. You said it. And so that Darius is limited by his own words. He's like, darn, I wish I could. No, you can't change your own word. And then kings are limited by past kings' words. So when Israel's rebuilding the temple, some of the locals try to stop him, and they tell the king in Persia. And so the Jews say, search through the records. And the king searches through the records. Sure enough, Cyrus said, okay, rebuild it. And so this king honors the previous king's words, and he says, continue rebuilding. And then you have kings limited by traditions, and that's lots and lots of kings' habits that are added up. Kings are limited by religion. Now we have the Judeo-Christian religion, which tells the king, hey, you're going to be held accountable before the ultimate judge, so you need to treat these other people right. But even in pagan cultures, the kings would claim to be divinely appointed, and they'd need some, Egyptian pagan religious order to confirm that they were the son of the god Osiris or whatever. And so the religious people would, but ultimately you had England, and you had the rich barons. 25 barons decided to limit King John, and they surrounded him on the fields of Runnymede in 1215 AD, and they forced him to sign the Magna Carta, which says, if you pick on any one of us, the other 24 are going to gang up on you. So you can't throw us in jail anytime you want. You can't take away our land anytime you want. But these were all efforts to limit the power of a king, because all the world knew was king. America comes along and cuts the umbilical cord and says, you know what? We're just not going to have a king. We're actually going to flip it and make the people the king. And so there's very few instances in world history where people get to be the king.
It's amazing that when we fought England, it was almost like God had his hand on all of the soldiers and the fighting, because we basically were outnumbered.
Yeah, the British had the most powerful military in the world. And if it wasn't for a 3,000-mile ocean, if it wasn't for us having a century and a half of practicing self-rule in the colonial era, because Europe was the chessboard, that was what the kings were fighting over, and we're sort of like a backwater, And if it wasn't for France entering the war as the second biggest power in the world, and Spain and Holland entered the war, that caused England to have to go from squelching a little rebellion in some of its colonies to now England has a global conflict with France and Holland and Spain all around the world. And so if it wasn't for all these ingredients, we never would have had this opportunity to break away, so where you get to be the king. So republic is where the people are king, ruling through representatives.
George Washington, wasn't he presented the idea of being king?
Right, there were several times in Washington's career where he could have been king. One was he was the general of the army that defeated the British. He could have marched into New York, where the capital was, and just said, I'm the king. And guess what? All of his soldiers would have gone along with him, because they had not been paid in a couple of years. There was actually a Newburgh conspiracy where the soldiers were plotting a military takeover of our country, and Washington shows up unannounced, and the room gets quiet. He pulls a note out of his pocket, and then he pulls out his glasses, his spectacles, and he puts them on, and no one had ever seen him wearing glasses before. And he says, excuse me, he said, I've grown blind in the service of my country. And he puts them on and he reads this note, and he says, we've fought so hard to break away from a king, and why should we, throw away all the blood that was shed by our comrades and go back to the same thing? I'm paraphrasing, but he folds up the note, puts it in his pocket, and walks out. And the whole Newburgh conspiracy evaporates. And so, but he could have walked in and says, okay, guys, you haven't been paid, I'll get it for you. And he could have been a king. The second is, the Constitution did not limit a president to 2 terms. He just, after 2 terms, says that's enough. And he set a precedent that every next president followed of only serving 2 terms until Franklin Roosevelt got himself elected 4 times. And so Congress passed the 20.
I think Franklin Roosevelt wanted to be king.
Yeah, and so the Congress passed the 22nd Amendment to limit a president to 2 terms. But So these are 2 times Washington could have stayed in for life, and he would have set a precedent for a president staying in for life, but he said 2 terms is enough.
Like our senators.
Yeah.
Are we the first republic ever?
No, there's been others, but so Athens is a democracy. So the difference between republic and democracy. Democracy, like Athens, everybody every day had to go to the market and talk politics. And if you don't show up for a couple days, you don't know what's going on, you're called an idiotus. That's where the term came from. You don't know what's going on. And so a republic, so a democracy never grew larger than a city because you couldn't be there every day if it was too
I
far.
never knew that.
A republic is you take care of your family and your farm, and you have someone in your place that goes to the market every day and talks politics. They are your representative.
So why are we still called a democracy?
Democracy has two definitions. One is the actual structure of a government, and we see that maybe at a church meeting, and so where everybody on the committee is there and everybody gets a chance to vote, but everyone has to be there. After the Cold War began, you had Truman and Eisenhower, and they began to use democracy in a more general sense of the people ruling themselves.
Okay.
And so that's why we use it in that sense. But as far as a functional form of government, it only worked on a small citywide level. And
Does Israel have a republic?
see, now this was the fascinating part of my research, is Israel. So America's founders, we did this flip of made the people the king. Where did the ideas come from? The New England colonies, the New England pastors. So you had Pastor Roger Williams founded Providence, Rhode Island, and the First Baptist Church in America. You had a Reverend Thomas Hooker, and his church founded Hartford, Connecticut, and he was a Congregationalist pastor where everybody in the congregation voted. This is unique in New England. You had pastors and their churches founding communities. And their congregational form of church government, they simply made their community government. But you research, where did they get their ideas? From the Bible. But where in the Bible? The first 400 years, excuse me, when Israel came out of Egypt. So before they got King Saul. So when Israel comes out of Egypt, where the Pharaoh controlled everything, for 400 years, Israel did not have a king. They were ruled by the law. And the law said there is no respect of persons in judgment. Rich or poor, everyone's the same. Male, female, made in the image of the Creator. This is not the, if you're friends with the king, you're more equal. You're not friends with the king, you're less equal. Enemy of the king, you're dead. There was no king. No royal family to butter up next to. Everyone was equal. Israel was the first nation with private land ownership. Because wherever there's a king, you never really own the land. It's always conditional of you staying on the nice side of the king. You cross the king, he will take away the land and kill you. In Israel, the land was permanently titled to each family. If they got in a pinch and sold it, every 50 years the land reverted back to that family. This prevented the dictator from gathering up the land, putting the people in slavery.
Isn't that something? That's great.
If you own land, you can accumulate stuff. The Bible called that being blessed. Karl Marx called it being a capitalist. You got stuff, you worked hard and saved it. So it's the promised land because the people actually got to own it. Israel was the first nation where there was no standing army. You have a king, he has an army to enforce his will. In Israel, every man was in the militia and armed with a sword upon their thigh, and they were ready at a moment's notice to defend their family and their community.
Wow.
It's still kind of sort of that way, isn't it?
It
over
is,
there?
yes.
Yeah.
And Israel was the first nation that could read. I thought this was interesting. Egypt had 3,000 hieroglyphic characters, and the scribes kept them complicated on purpose as job security. They were needed, as the scribes were needed to interpret these complicated hieroglyphs. Only 1% of Egypt could read. And then in Sumeria, they had 1,500 cuneiform characters, where you take the stick, poke it in clay, right? China at that time had 10,000 Chinese characters, begun by the Yellow Emperor, right, and on bamboo annal books. When Moses comes down the mountain, he does, around 1400 BC, he does not just have the law, he has the law in 22 characters, not 1,500 characters or 3,000 characters or 10,000 Chinese characters, 22 characters. So easy to learn, kids could learn how to read. No longer was reading and writing the communication of the deep state, and they're controlling all these ignorant masses of people. Yeah. So Israel had a literate populace. But then the big question was, so they're all taught the law, why do they follow it? And so this, to me, if there's a spectrum of power, Total government one side, no government on the other. Total government, you get a king who rules through fear, you do what he says or he kills you. No government is anarchy. No government? Unless everybody's taught the law. It's like everybody downloads a behavioral app on their iPhone.
Yeah, right.
And the Levites are the computer geeks that help you to download it. But the big question is, why would you follow it? Israel had the key ingredient. There is a God who is watching everyone. He wants you to be fair, and he's going to hold you accountable in the future. So you're about to steal, nobody's around, and then you think, God is watching me. He wants me to be fair. He's going to hold me accountable. Maybe I should hesitate stealing.
Okay.
Create something in your head called the conscience. If everybody in the country really believes this, you can maintain complete order and safety and security with no police. Wow. So that's the plan that America's founders decided to adopt.
I love this guy.
Certainly getting away from that, aren't we, in
Yeah,
this
that's
country?
right. We're going to do a part 2, so tomorrow, please stay tuned, and you will be blessed again. You know, so many times I'll watch programs and I'll see somebody like this and I'll go, man, I wish I could get more of that, because we only have a half-hour show. So make sure you put it on your calendar or wherever you want to remind yourself, because we're going to pick up and continue this. Literally, it's a lesson on yesterday, today, and the forever. And we need to know history. It is being taken from us, and hopefully your kids, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, which we have just had one, will get a hold of these books, and that the world won't be so crazy that they take them all like they did during Hitler's time and had a huge bonfire. Everything that he did not approve of was burned in the fire. So we're heading that way. Only God can stop it. Tomorrow, tune in again. Watch this.
Ronald Reagan, 1961, said, "In this country of ours took place the greatest revolution that has ever taken place in the world's history. Every other revolution simply exchanged one set of rulers for another." Every other revolution, you're simply saying, okay, well, get rid of this king, get a different king. Get rid of this monarch, get a different monarch. You got one monarch over here and he gets conquered by another country and they got their monarch. And so the history of the world is basically the history of these few people called kings and their royal families. Reagan continues saying, "Here for the first time in all the thousands of years of man's relation to man, the Founding Fathers established the idea that you and I have within ourselves the God-given right and ability to determine our own destiny."